Good morning. Thank God it's Friday, October 18, 2024. And of course, we are on this site of Inside Nigeria, your breakfast on leadership television. My name is Winifred Ugbebo, your host on the program. Today's program, we are just going to be looking at front headline stories of some select newspapers, including Nigeria's foremost Friday newspaper, Leadership Friday. Let's go with Leadership Friday and see what is leading with this Friday. Leadership Friday says fiscal crisis, subsidy removal, Naira float saved Nigeria, according to World Bank. Fiscal crisis, subsidy removal, Naira float saved Nigeria, World Bank. People are facing untold hardship. We risk being lynched, Bala Mohammed, the governor of Bauchi State. Federal government declares end to fuel forest subsidies. I'll take that leading story once again. And of course, it's that leading story that is also gracing the cover of some of other newspapers we have on our menu today. Starting with Leadership Friday, fiscal crisis, subsidy removal, Naira float save Nigeria, according to World Bank. People are facing untold hardship. We risk being lynched, Bala Mohammed counters. Federal government declares end to fuel forest subsidies. Let's have a snippet of that leading story today. We move to page 4. The World Bank Group has stated that Nigeria would have entered a fiscal crisis worse than the current situation if the federal government had not taken the bold steps of removing fuel subsidies, floating the currency, and adjusting electricity tariffs, amongst other measures. Nigeria took the bold and courageous move to undertake difficult but critical reforms. This is against an already fragile economic position, high food and transport inflation, and other heightened uncertainties. If these reforms had not been implemented, Nigeria would have fallen into a serious fiscal crisis that would have made it difficult for the government to meet its obligations to citizens, stated the World Bank Country Director for Nigeria, Ndiame Diop, yesterday in Abuja. Those are three paragraphs on that headline story on Leadership Friday today. Other papers, other stories on the cover of Leadership say Nigeria exits aviation blacklist as rating hits 75.5%. Still on Leadership Friday. Nigeria exits aviation blacklist as rating hits 75.5%. Death toll in Jigawa tanker explosion rises to 154. And don't forget to grab a copy of Leadership Sunday this Sunday for a copy of Leadership Levogue is an all glossy color style magazine. Beside the masthead of Leadership Friday, we won't impeach Akpabio, Senate. The story is on page 4 of Leadership. And above the masthead, federal government receives 846,000 doses of malaria vaccine. Most arms in hands of terrorists are government-owned, Ribadu. Most arms in hands of terrorists are government-owned, Nuhu Ribadu is the NSA, that is National Security Advisor. He says most arms in hands of terrorists are government-owned. With that, we move to the page 3 where we have our stand. Today's stand on Leadership Friday is on enhancing investment in Nigeria's raw materials. Enhancing investment in Nigeria's raw materials. From our stand, we move to the back page where we have conversation with Azu. This week, Azu is writing on does it still make sense to trust Tinubu? Is something you have to find answers to. In quote, Tinubu's reputation has taken such a severe beating that promises of light at the end of the tunnel have been brushed aside. Quote from that column, does it still make sense to trust Tinubu? Coming from conversation with Azu Isekwene. Azu Isekwene is the editor-in-chief of Leadership Media Group. With that, we conclude review of today's Leadership newspaper. For more, log on to www.leadership.ng. From Leadership, we move to the Punch. Punch says skyrocketing inflation, Nigerians lament hunger. World Bank says 129 million trapped in poverty. Skyrocketing inflation, Nigerians lament hunger. World Bank says 129 million trapped in poverty. Commodities price jumped 45.92% under Tinubu as small business owners lament downtown. A rider to that leading story on World Bank. Government orders discos to replace phased out meters. Story runs on page 32 of the Punch. Cholera has killed 378 cases, rise to 14,237 coming from NCDC. Cholera has killed 378 cases, rise to 14,237 NCDC. Just beside the masthead of the punch, federal government, states, local governments share 1.298 trillion naira revenue. Federal government, states, local governments share 1.298 trillion naira revenue. And above the masthead of the punch, OPS carpets Tinubu reforms, CSOs demand cabinet shakeup. Tanker explosion, federal government promises to rebuild razed Jigawa town. NIMC boss gets accolades for improved staff welfare. That concludes review of front headline stories on the Punch newspaper. For more, log on to www.punchng.com. From the Punch, Daily Sun is next. Daily Sun says Bauchi governor knocks Tinubu, says president's reforms not working, warns of possible attack on political leaders. And Kalu says he's doing his best to reinvent Nigeria. Bauchi governor knocks Tinubu, says president's reforms not working, warns of possible attack on political leaders. Bauchi State Governor Bala Mohammed is also the chairman of PDP Governors Forum. Airbus Boeing removed Nigeria from watch list. The story is on page 24 of Daily Sun. NSA says how government arms end up in the hands of criminals. NGE Imo government UNICEF engage editors on Southeast/South-South challenges. That is National Guild of Editors. Imo government UNICEF engage editors on Southeast South-South challenges. Of course, the National Guild of Editors actually is presently meeting in Imo for their annual conference. Nigeria receives 846,000 doses of malaria vaccine. The story runs on page 26 of Daily Sun. That takes us to the last story on the paper today, where we have the story beside the masthead of Daily Sun. Cholera death toll hits 378, another 14,237 infected. NCDC raises the alarm on looming dry season related outbreaks. That concludes front headline story review today on Daily Sun. For more, log on to www.thesun.ng. From Daily Sun, we move over to the next paper, and that is Vanguard. Vanguard still on Bauchi and World Bank issues. It says federal government's reforms not working. Bauchi governor counters World Bank. Federal government's reforms not working. Bauchi governor counters World Bank. The leading story today on Vanguard newspaper says people hungry may lynch us. Reversing reforms will spare doom for Nigeria, World Bank warns. Why we must sustain reforms, Adun. CBN doesn't determine forex rates, Cardoso. My fear about reforms, World Bank VP, Chief Economist, Gill. These are kickers to the headline story. Federal government's reforms not working. Bauchi governor counters World Bank. Beneath that headline, we have another second headline. Hardship fueling voter apathy. Political parties won. Hardship fueling voter apathy. Political parties won. Going at 90, your dedication to Nigeria's unity, progress leaves indelible mark, Northern senators. Jigawa explosion, death toll rises to 168 as survival recounts ordeal. Flooding, relocate from riverbanks, federal government warns Nigerians. Federal government inaugurates panel to tow $112.53 million Abuja, Kefi, Akwanga, Makurdi roads. And in sports, Super Eagles/Libya saga, CAF fixes date for verdict on investigation. Stakeholders move to stop NAS probe of oil industry. According to sources, the story is on page 9 of Vanguard. Stakeholders move to stop NAS probe of oil industry. And above the masthead of Vanguard, why Naira is worst performing currency, experts. NGE, Imo government, UNICEF engage editors on Southeast South-South challenges. Politically motivated court judgments threaten our democracy, according to Jonathan, former president of Nigeria. Politically motivated court judgments threaten our democracy. And lastly, on cover of Vanguard today, many injured as CNG powered vehicle explodes in Benin City. The story runs on page 6 of Vanguard. For more, log on to the website of Vanguard newspapers, www.vanguardngr.com. From Vanguard, we move over to the last paper on our menu for review this Friday morning, and that is The Guardian. The Guardian says hashtag NSAS protest at 4 so soon. And says hashtag NSAS protest is 4 years anniversary today. A specter of abuses, bad leadership still haunting 4 years after. I'll take that again. Hashtag NSAS protest at 4. A specter of abuses, bad leadership still haunting 4 years after. There's a big story today on The Guardian, and it runs on pages 4 and 5 of the paper. And underneath that, we have panel recommendations, NSAS, and bad governance. All books in the court. We have the Lady Court Justice holding her sword of Damocles. The illustration beneath that big story today on The Guardian. Hashtag NSAS protest at 4. A specter of abuses, bad leadership still haunting 4 years after. 129 million Nigerians living below poverty line, says World Bank. Federal government orders residents to relocate from flood-prone River Benue, Niger areas. APC accused of meddling ahead of 2027 polls as PDP Labour Party reel from internal crisis. JAMB relaxes admission age policy for 2024-2025 academic session. Senior corps storm PSC over alleged abandonment or pay. Revenue strings as federal government, states, local governments share 1.298 trillion naira. Bids for independent candidacy, New South State scale second reading. That concludes the review of front headline stories on The Guardian today, Friday, October 18, 2024. For more, log on to the website www.guardian.ng. So with that, viewers, we've come to the end of today's Friday edition of Inside Nigeria, brought to you on Leadership Television. Don't forget to join us same time, same station for another fresh edition of the program next week, Monday. My name is Winifred Ubebo. Here's wishing you a beautiful weekend ahead.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.